You know, the last time we did this, Rosa, a few months ago, we were debating whether we were in a recession or not, and you were advocating for an extension to unemployment benefits. You know, Rosa has always been an advocate for employees and for fairness, and sponsored the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Employment Act was passed and signed in by President Obama last week. For those of you who don't know, Lilly Ledbetter worked for a number of years at pay rates much less than her peers, and this law goes a long way to equalize those inequities that have been there. So congratulations for you and Congress and the President are looking to do. Comes at a time when the economic downturn has certainly upended the jobs in the United States and in Connecticut. Here in Connecticut, we lost 30,000 jobs last year, and 20,000 of those just in the last 2 months of last year. So the resulting unemployment rate went from 4.8% in December of 2007 to 7.1% now. And that's a 50% increase, and in terms of live bodies, that's almost 21,000 people that are receiving unemployment benefits. The number of people who are working part-time nationwide went from 4.6 million to 8 million in that same one-year time period. You know, if you add that to the people who have dropped out and the people who are you know, not seeking unemployment benefits anymore, the rate can nearly double. I'm sure you would agree. And I'm sure you're going to hear, I'm just trying to step in. Nick Fernand is probably going to tell you what the unemployment rate is going to go to, so I'm not going to conjecture. And also, I mean, one other figure is that the number of hours in the country have dipped to about 33. Average hours of employment in the country are about 33 hours, which is an all-time low. Overtime is drying up, and regular work hours are being cut. All of you are here. This is one of our 4 Connecticut Works Career Centers in the region. Just in the period of time from, and I'm sure you saw a full house as you walked through, we've seen an increase in the traffic in our one-stop centers from just from September to December, an increase of 30%. Also, I guess I would mention one thing is that you know, businesses are closing. We've had a record number of business closings. 13,000 shut their doors in 2008, 18% increase over 2007, and the number of new business starts are down 11%. So businesses aren't opening, businesses are closing. Our job developers, some of them who are here in the room, are experiencing a 75% reduction in the number of job orders they've got this year compared to last year. So I wish I had some good news in this. You know, I suppose the one bright spot is that we did add a little over 4,000 jobs in healthcare and about 300 jobs in education last year, so that's a bright spot. So this really couldn't, the stimulus package couldn't come at a better time, and we look forward to working with you. And I'd like to introduce Congresswoman Rosa.
Thanks so much. Channel 3, can I put that there? Is that going to be okay? Good morning. Thank you very much. My apologies to all of you. And I did literally get on a train at 5 a.m. This morning, and the 5 a.m. broke down. So then they in Baltimore put us on the 6 a.m. and then the 6 a.m. broke down. But here I am. I just, you know, was up in the middle of the night, but it feels like I've gone the whole day here. So, and it's 11 o'clock, 11:30. What I wanted to talk about, and I thank Bill and I thank all the folks here for the work that they do. But we're here to talk about Connecticut's future. The economy, as Bill has pointed out, is in crisis. Businesses are in the red. Families are on the brink. So the obvious, we need to and have an obligation to act quickly, to act boldly, to be able to restore great promise to this nation again. The Workforce Alliance, everyone here at Connecticut Works One-Stop Center that you're hosting us today is terrific, but more than they're hosting us, what tireless efforts that you make on behalf of Connecticut's families, whether it's career counseling, skill training, connecting job seekers with potential employers, you make a difference. And you can see the activities, and as I quickly came through, folks in rooms and filling out papers and etc. So this is such an important place in people's lives today as we are in the midst of this crisis. We will as well hear from Nick Perner this morning and what it's going to take to turn our economy around. David Couris, the Connecticut Director of the Regional Plan Association, will take a look at our local economy and our efforts to find some ways in getting us on a sound economic footing. This is a crisis, an economic crisis, the crisis that's greater than any since the Great Depression. You know, it's true. The last time we met, I had the opportunity through my seat on the Budget Committee to ask Chairman Bernanke of the Federal Reserve whether or not we were in a recession. He thought that an unfair question. He said that's an unfair question. I didn't think it was an unfair question to ask an economist and head of the Federal Reserve what state we're in. I also asked him to talk about what the size of an economic recovery package ought to be. He refused to answer that question as well at that time. I'm happy to tell you that and it's a bright spot that we are in a new environment in which there is a great sense of reality about what this economic situation is all about. A staggering 2.6 million American jobs were lost in the last year of the prior administration, the culmination of a failed economic approach, in my view. Just this Friday, reports show the GDP shrinking at a 3.8% annual rate in the fourth quarter, the sharpest contraction in 26 years. To confront these challenges, we have an urgent responsibility to invest wisely, to target limited resources to the proven initiatives that we know will create jobs and provide a critical relief. Just 2 weeks ago, President Barack Obama was sworn in with a call for, and I quote, action, bold and swift. Last week, the House passed the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, our economic recovery program to save 3 to 4 million jobs. It's about helping a middle class hit hard by stagnant wages, rising healthcare costs, and a financial market that is in crisis. First, that means putting resources in the hands of people most likely to spend them quickly to get our economy moving again for a short term and for a long term, and to provide relief to those most in need. That begins with $100 billion in unemployment benefits and in job training. Then the Make Work Pay tax cut provides immediate and sustained tax relief to 95% of working people through a refundable tax credit of up to $500 per person, phasing out at $200,000 for couples filing jointly. It's a down payment, if you will, on President Obama's plan for a permanent middle-class tax relief. At the same time, the bill expands eligibility of the child tax credit by reducing the threshold from $12,000 a year income to zero, so that all families are eligible. And to be eligible for the child tax credit, there is a work requirement for that child tax credit. Over 16 million children would benefit, 119,000 in Connecticut alone. To make college more affordable, nearly 1/5 of high school seniors who currently receive no tax credit will receive a tax cut for the first time. Second, as our nation continues to reel under staggering unemployment numbers, 7.1% here in Connecticut. You know, just about a year ago, or maybe a little bit longer than that, the unemployment rate in the state of Connecticut was less than 5%, 4.9%. We are now at 7.1%. And you know, I just want to tell you this in terms of the knowledge of what is going on in this nation. Last night I had the opportunity to see President Obama, and we were talking about the economic recovery package in the Senate, and I just said to him, I said, you know, Mr. President, last year the unemployment number in Connecticut was 4.9%. And he turned to me and said, yes, Rose, he says, and today it's 7.1%. Not someone who is unaware of what the economic crisis is about in this nation. Building a 21st century economy requires that we put people back to work. That is first and foremost what we need to do. Requires that we rebuild crumbling roads, bridges. Connecticut will receive $391.3 million in highways and bridges alone, and another $85 million for transit capital. Infrastructure is more than just transportation, it's how we stay competitive. That means doubling our renewable energy production, renovating public buildings to make them more energy efficient, creating more than 500,000 jobs by spurring energy efficiency investment in our homes and schools, to cut energy costs, and to spur investment in renewable energy and better fuel-efficient cars for a greener future. Add to that $40 billion in investments in broadband and a smarter energy grid, promising to create more than 900,000 U.S. jobs, more than half of which will be in small business. Good jobs that cannot be outsourced, while spurring economic growth, putting the nation on a better path, not just for today, but for the future. Of course, it starts at the beginning with an investment in human capital. From Head Start, child care, from a serious infusion of resources, to No Child Left Behind, to IDEA, to Pell Grants, investing in education is one of the best ways to help America become stronger, more productive, and more competitive. Finally, we need to help states and localities which face massive mid-year budget shortfalls. Connecticut is dealing with a mid-year budget gap of $392 million, a projected fiscal year 2010 budget gap of 2.5. For our communities, services that they rely on every single day. You've got police, fire, schools, emergency rooms, and we do have a responsibility to do everything that we can to keep further cuts in these services, to cut and to make sure what we're dealing with is as these higher fees hit a middle class, we're able to mitigate against that, because this is a time when people can least afford to be paying these for these high services. We're going to provide $1 billion for community and economic development projects and relief for those that are losing their jobs, and new affordable options for maintaining their health care coverage. So critical. It was the Wall Street Journal last week who had an article that's saying, you know, people who are jobless can't afford health care benefits. They can't pay for COBRA. They just can't make it. So that we have to do something to mitigate that effort as well, and this bill, in fact, does that. To protect existing Medicaid coverage for millions of Americans, the package provides Connecticut $1.2 billion in additional federal matching Medicaid funds to help stave off cuts in health care in the face of massive state budget shortfalls. Because when the unemployment number goes up, so do the uninsured. That the recovery package provides a 65% subsidy for people extending their insurance under COBRA for up to 12 months. Anyone looking for immediate, significant impact need look no further than food stamps. Generates $1.73 in new economic activity for every dollar invested. The bill provides $20 billion to increase the food stamp benefit, which could reach 14 million households, 238,000 in Connecticut, less than a month after the bill is enacted. To be sure, a big price tag alone will not solve all of our problems. The funds in this recovery package must be spent effectively and efficiently. That demands accountability at every level. In Washington, where we have crafted the bill, to all of the states and localities which are responsible for making sure that the resources reach those who are in most need and where they will have the greatest impact. And there are precautions in the legislation to deal with what transparency and accountability so that we can monitor where the funds are going and how they're being spent. You know, ultimately, our success depends upon looking beyond Democratic or Republican labels to get this done because of the needs of the American people today. I think that there is an understanding that this is a moment that requires bold solutions that are going to drive economic growth and job creation directly. To deal with a downturn of historic proportions, we are in effect trying to launch a historic effort, unprecedented in scope and unprecedented in size. Look, we are in a position to make it work and to renew this country's great promise for generations to come. Two principles in this economic recovery package: create jobs and to prevent states and localities from having to cut back on services and to cut back and to cut back on layoffs, so that we can just, you know, when we first started to talk about an economic recovery package, we proposed in the last session of the Congress, before we left in October, a bill that was $61 billion that we thought was a large bill. But it was economists on whatever spectrum of the philosophical spectrum that is out there, whether they were left, in the middle, on the right, conservative, progressives, whatever, said it has to be big, it has to be bold, it has to focus on job creation, and it has to focus on the prevention of the cutoff of services. That's what we have tried to do. This bill passed the House of Representatives last week. It moves to the Senate this week, and I'm sure that there will be some changes, but my hope is that the Senate will come together, both sides of the aisle, and pass a bill which we can have on the President's desk by the end of next week. That is what the goal is all about, and bill which he can sign, and then we can move to get these programs underway. You did hear from Bill Villano. Let me introduce to you Nick Perna, has Perna Associates. It's a consulting firm specializing in economic analysis, forecasting, and strategy. Until 1999, Nick was the chief economist for Fleet Financial Group, a position he also held with the Charlotte Bank and Connecticut National Bank. Before that, he was an economist with General Electric, Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and the President's Council of Economic Advisors in Washington.
Thank you very much for that introduction. From a political point of view, I'm a member of Governor Rel. I'm here as a private citizen / professional economist. I've been doing economic forecasting the bulk of my adult life, and I think the forecast, when people ask me when are things going to start to get better, if we're lucky, the second half of this year is when they'll stop deteriorating. The unemployment rate will continue to rise for a while after that. It'll take a while after that for jobs to stabilize, and a while after that for house prices to stop falling. And this will mark the longest and deepest recession in the last 60 years. It started in December of 2007, to answer Rosa's question to Ben Bernanke. I remember I was watching that on TV at the time. And if it's over in June, July, or August, that will make it the longest by several months, and probably one of the deepest in terms of the decline in gross domestic product and the rise in the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate hit 25%. However, even this forecast that I just mentioned is only doable with a stimulus package enacted. So assumed by the forecasters who participate in the various surveys is that the Congress, the House, and the Senate will take very, very prompt action and enact something big. What if we don't? Well, one of the possibilities if we don't is that we could get into a situation commonly being talked about as deflation, where prices are falling. And the problem with deflation, which we experienced here in the 1930s, and Japan experienced throughout much of the 1990s, is that it's an economic quicksand. Once you get into it, it's very, very difficult to get out of it. Think of it this way: prices are falling, so people have a negative incentive to spend. It pays to postpone. It means that whatever stimulus package you should have enacted, it'll have to be much larger to get you out of the new mess that you're in. So I think that, is it big enough? It could be bigger. I'd be even more comfortable if you were to have passed the larger package, and there are aspects of it. I don't know, I can relate to this COBRA stuff because there's a member of our family who was recently unemployed. And what COBRA means is that if you lose your job, your employer is no longer obligated to pay your medical benefits. So what you're allowed under federal law is to purchase your medical benefits from your employer at his or her full cost plus 2%. So there's no more subsidy. So if you had a family, you were paying $300 a month to pay $1,000 or more per month out of the unemployment benefits of what? Maybe $1,500 a month or whatever it amounts to. So the choice open to many people under these circumstances is COBRA or the rent, COBRA or food, or no medical insurance. And so this, I thought, was one of the most, not simply stimulative, but one of the most humane parts of the bill, which is that the federal government, for I think it's a period of a year, will underwrite 2/3 of it. In other words, make it look more like it was with your employer, so that you can, forgive me for keep doing this, so that you can sustain as best you can your lifestyle. The other thing I want to mention is that I was very happy to see that the states are included, because to underscore Congresswoman Delauro's comment about the state fiscal situation, we're in dire straits. The budget deficit for the coming 2 fiscal years, because we passed 2-year budgets in Connecticut, and I'm speaking now as a private citizen again, the budget deficit could be as large as $6 billion or $3 billion per year on a base of $18 billion. And not only would spending reductions, if it all had to come out of one way or another, not only would that harm the quality of services and the quality of life, but if you add up all the states, what ends up happening is they become a major drag on the U.S. economy, repeating what happened during the Great Depression of the 1930s. So this bill, while it may not be perfect, and it certainly isn't, could we produce a better one? Sure, we always can. But can you do it within a timely fashion and get it out there so that people can start going back to work and start spending again? It addresses what I think are the kinds of things that need to be addressed. It gives a large amount of quick stimulus. It addresses humane issues, and it even comes in and tries to deal with the growing national problem of state and local budget deficits in the midst of a very severe recession. Thank you very much for listening.
Let me introduce you now David Kurz. He's the Director of Regional Planning, the Regional Planning Association's Connecticut office. He's a senior planner at RPA. He's managed a variety of community design and growth management projects in Connecticut, in the Hudson Valley, and Long Island. An emphasis in all of his work is community participation and the involvement of as wide a spectrum of stakeholders as is possible. David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Well, I'm here today to talk about the infrastructure piece of the stimulus package, which has gotten, I've been watching the news agencies the past few days. It's getting sort of mounting criticism that Congress is taking this opportunity to, this has been demonstrated to have more than a 50% return on every dollar spent. And as the Congress is currently trending with, in the Senate, the leadership of our own Senator Dodd, looking for projects that are not only shovel-ready, but also future-ready. If on the other end of this recession we were going to be back in 2004 or 2001, we could focus entirely on the immediate needs, preparing the nation for those challenges which will face us at the other end of this tunnel, be it energy security, national security, climate change. So infrastructure clearly creates short-term jobs, and as the bill is currently written, and I'm sure these aspects will stay in it, they mandate that projects be shovel-ready, have all their local approvals, and they mandate that a certain share of them actually break ground within 90 days. So that clearly has a job creation implication, unlike some of the other aspects that are completely necessary in terms of personal economies and restoring national confidence. But I know what I'm going to do with my tax cut, and it's not going to be spending it immediately. It's going to go towards paying off my credit cards, or last time I bought a bike, which happened to be made in China. Short-term stimulus, but didn't reposition the country in any sort of long-term direction. Then in the medium term, a lot of this infrastructure chips away at those deficits which currently exist in our water, sewer, energy, and transportation systems. The energy, the home retrofit programs, the school retrofit programs, those all have a medium-term impact on the personal economies of individuals that then have less of a burden on their energy bills and more money that they can dedicate to spending, saving, or even towards things like home purchase. Similarly, investments in mass transit and upkeeps in the road and bridge infrastructure lower people's personal costs for mobility, and also, as we've seen around the nation, transit investments have a concrete, clear, and quick impact on property values, which again increase the ability of you to build equity in your home, and the ability of local governments who are so dependent on local property taxes. And then in the long term, of course, the appropriate types of infrastructure like mass transit, like pedestrian infrastructure in our downtowns, a smart energy grid, better sewer and water repairs in our downtowns, also position us to meet those long-term challenges of the nation, reducing our dependence on foreign oil, working to mitigate the impacts of climate change, and reducing the flow of capital from the United States to petro-dictatorships around the world that have a clear and concrete impact on our national security. I mentioned the last time we were discussing this in the fall, that Connecticut has this phenomenal legacy of walkable downtowns, mass transit, natural landscapes. That's really the foundation of a sustainable state, one that can that can be competitive in an age of carbon constraint and volatile energy costs. And we have an opportunity here to not only create jobs within the next few months, but also to build upon that legacy and solidify our global competitiveness for all those challenges that will still exist on the other end of this recession.
To come on up here, and let's open it up for questions. You've heard from from people who are can give you the overview of the economy, of what the infrastructure.
For the stimulus money to go through the various layers, federal, state, local, to get down to here where it's needed.
Well, I think the goal here, as I said, we passed this bill in the House. We're hoping this bill passes in the Senate this week, get it on the President's desk. The goal is to get this signed by the President by the 12th to the 13th of that's next week, and then the money can go. And we talked about in terms of the infrastructure projects, that these are projects that need to be ready to move, ready to go. That's going to be the byword on it, and you've got a bulk of them in which it's a 90-day. You've got to be able to turn it. You've got to be able to move it in a 90-day framework. They're going to get it's going to move quickly. I mean, that's the point. We are in a crisis situation here, and I too wish, as Nick Perna pointed out, that we were able to to do this several months ago. That's not the case, so we have to act now, and we have to act boldly now, and I believe that this bill in essence does that. Do I wish there were more for economic recovery? Do I wish there were more for it? You bet. But $825 billion is not a small package. Let's move on it. Let's monitor it. Let's make sure it's transparent. Let's make sure there's accountability built in. People a little economic relief. Let's create those jobs.
I was just going to say, I don't have a specific answer to your question, but I was in D.C. last week, and the federal agency that oversees what we do is the Department of Labor. They are already in the process of writing the regulations, writing the directives. Our State Department of Labor is already looking at possible funding scenarios and how those would be allocated to the local districts. So I think people have really taken the opportunity to be very proactive in this and are preparing for a quick turnaround.
This is about $6 billion to the state of Connecticut over the 2-year period. Yes.
Do you have the list of shovel-ready projects from the governor's office? Last I heard that you were still finalizing.
I don't have a finalized list here, so we're.
You know if one's been finished?
I can't answer that question as far as I know. I know that I've been in touch with all of the cities and towns in the 3rd Congressional District to get information from them about what, what projects they view as shovel-ready. We have obviously communicated that to the, the State Department of Transportation, but we have, that information as well. But I don't know for the entire state. Go ahead.
I think one important piece to note is that as you add up all these lists, and I haven't seen, I don't think there is yet a final list, but as you add up all the municipal projects, the regional projects, and the state level projects, really there's been a whole lot of wish lists that are going to add up to significantly more than the 400, 500 million that we have for transportation infrastructure at least. And I think we all need to be advocating consistently with our representatives at the state level and at the federal level that the prioritization scheme that elevates those projects towards the top of the list that will actually get funded.
That's absolutely correct. This has got to be to the letter. They've got to be ready to go there, and there's got to be a scrubbing of what gets done. It isn't everybody's wish list. Yes?
Is there any money in this stimulus package to help companies that are considering laying people off, but might, if they got a little bit of money, a little bit of credit somehow, be able to hold off for a couple of months, maybe long enough to get us out of the recession?
Yeah, I'm not, an expert in every particular provision, but I think there are expanded loss carryback or loss carryback provisions. In other words, companies can actually, I think it refunds under the
going to 5 years back.
Yeah, so this may be able to help them get some working capital more than they would otherwise have gotten in the absence of the legislative change.
I would also say, again, from an employment standpoint, that I asked a question in Washington, and one of the ways to do that is to help companies with existing workers. It's called incumbent worker training, where we can, in fact, allow companies to train their employees to learn new technologies, to be able to better compete. We work very closely with the community college. Darcy Kendrick is here from the community college. And they are going to allow that type of activity. So we may be able to work not only with people that are unemployed, but be able to work with companies that will be able to continue the employment of individuals and compete more effectively.
There's a point that doesn't get the attention it deserves in any discussion of any stimulus package. It does for employment benefits or what it does in terms of the middle class tax cut or infrastructure. But then when that money gets spent and respent, what you end up with is what everybody talks about but forgets what it means, and that is you get multiplier effects. And so while maybe my particular business is not directly in the first round of effects, if the stimulus package works, and I'm sure it will, then my business will feel the benefits of it as this money gets spent and respent. And so even though I'm not the initial impact, I'm in the impact. And I think that's part of the response to your question. Business will get better with this package for businesses. There'll be more purchases made, and that means that their cash flow will increase, and so on down the line.
The tax incentive to businesses is about $20 billion over 10 years. So as Nick has pointed out, it will make its way through the system and through the economy in terms of that multiplier effect.
Is there anything, sorry if I missed it, but as we move to a new economy, and especially older workers need to be training for industries that may be dying out, for going to the industries that are coming up, high technology industries. What kind of retraining money is there, especially for older workers who are going to college now to get that new.
I think there's about there's roughly $4 billion that's going to Department of Labor for some of this, and about $1 billion of that is for what's called dislocated workers, which are primarily people who have been displaced or been out of the workplace and looking to get back in and be retrained in other occupations. I don't know what percentage of that will be in Connecticut, but that's what it is nationally.
Helping, training and employment services, vocational rehab services, employment service grants, community service employment for older Americans. So I think there is an eye to looking at what is happening with dislocated workers. That has been a continued problem, and the traditional answer to that has been, especially if it's with regard to trade adjustment assistance, which we know that has not been that effective. So how do we try to make this more effective? And I look, in all honesty, I think we have to spend time thinking about that, and that's not an easy answer.
You know, what's interesting too is what our state of the workforce showed is that more older workers have remained in the economy. We haven't seen the exodus that was predicted once the boomers turned. So, and in fact, there was a greater percentage of 65 to 70-year-olds working than we've seen.
They have to. They thought they were going to retire. They're not.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the investment in education.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Now let me be precise, and I know Dorsey's interested in this.
Yes.
Give me a second here. A legitimate expenditure in this. It's true. There's people who have said that, and that is Title I. It's about $13 billion. IDEA, you know, that's the arrangement between federal government and states in terms of special education. $13 billion. School modernization repair program, $14 billion. Educational technology, $1 billion. $15.6 billion to increase the Pell Grant by $500, bringing the Pell Grant up to about $5,300. The average Pell Grant in this state is about $3,200. We're finding more and more as the youngsters, because they can't afford it, their families can't afford to get them to higher education, that they're not going. What does that mean for the future economic growth of this country? Then there are, in terms of Connecticut, for Title I, it's about $97 million. IDEA is $146 million. School construction, K-12, $117 million. University and colleges, $58 million. Connecticut Pell Grants, as I said, the number of recipients for Pell Grants was about almost 52,000. Average award is $3,200. It's about $170 million for Pell Grants. Connecticut Education Technology Grants, Head Start, Child Care Development Block Grants, Connecticut Community. This is inclusive social services as well. Connecticut Community Social Services Block Grant, and there's money for life in this package. Yes.
I'm not sure this is important or not, but this is important to me.
Well, then it's important to us.
In the state and the region, who did the right thing, who worked, put their money in 401ks, so they didn't have a choice, because their defined benefit pensions went away, and now have seen their savings drop by 50, 60, 30%, whatever. Advice.
What do you do? I'm in the same boat. I was going to ask you. No, but seriously, I guess, what you shouldn't do is get consumed with woulda, shoulda, coulda. Because if I had been fully clairvoyant a year and a half ago, I'd be in a heck of a lot better financial space than I am today. And that's true of everyone in the room. But that's like saying if my mother had wheels, she'd be a trolley car. I'd say, no, okay? So I think. But a serious cycle, things will come back. I'm not saying that the Dow is going to get back to 14,000 and change where it was back in October of 2007, or anytime very quick. But one of the things that the stock market has done is that it's been a rather decent leading indicator of when the economy is coming out of recession. And part of the reason is that it smells recovery, and also part of the reason is because it helps produce recovery, because if it gets better, then people start spending and feel better, and it creates wealth. Okay, so your 40, as soon as we get a recovery going, your 401k, even before then, should start to feel better. But then the other two things, I think I think people may have to look at the plans that they made, and maybe, you know, we live longer, we're healthier. It means that we may have to end up working longer, not simply because to get walking around money, but to get the kind of money we need to sustain ourselves. Yeah. And I think the other thing, though, is that my mother was an economist, was not an economist by any stretch of the imagination. She always would say, right. But she, you know, she always said, it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. I think one of the lessons we should learn is that, you know, the risk-free rate of return is not 10% a year, it's not 15% a year. It's a lot lower than that. So in investing in the future, we need to not take risk just because somebody says this or that doubles every 5 or 10 years. It may have doubled over the last 10 years, and if you look at the long, that's true of housing. Housing does not historically double in price every 10 years. It only did it recently. And if you look back at the long-term history of housing, as Bob Schiller at Yale has done, what you come away with is warnings not to get caught up in it.
Are there anything to share about your Super Bowl party at the White House yesterday?
I'd be happy to do that. Let me focus on any more questions. I'd be happy to talk about that. One of the things I'm going to try to do over the next several weeks, understanding of the House, the Senate, as I said, is taking up the legislation, and we're optimistic about getting the support to pass that bill, and then the president's signature. So that when there is a final package, what I'd very much like to do is, and we're going to try to make use of the technology, maybe through these kind of town meetings or that kind of thing, and do this with specific groups, with education, with folks from education, with the municipalities, and how you can access the dollar amounts. And so we're going to try to make it as easy as possible for people to have the information on this, and to be able to access the information in order to be able to move and to move quickly for those the institutions, as well as for people just to know. We'll put it up on the website and as well. First of all, it was a terrific game last night. Oh, I'm assuming he was a ballet dancer with him on his toes like that, and not going out of bounds at the end. It was just spectacular. I was pleased that I said that I was delighted to be there. I wished it were the the Patriots, Giants, or Jets that were playing, but in the contest I was supporting the Steelers, and it was touch and go there for a while with all the hype around it. It was a delight. There were a number of my colleagues that were there, and the President and Michelle Obama were very, very gracious hosts, and the President went around, spoke to everyone, was as casual and as which is his demeanor. There's a sense of of control, whether it is the most difficult problems or whether or not it was being there. I was the first time had been invited to such a gathering, and my husband and I were there, and our kids were very unhappy with us there, but the only thing was that they didn't have some good buffalo chicken wings. Or Sally's Pizza, or Pepe's Pizza, or pizza from New Haven.
Was the President controlled when that last touchdown?
Yes. My colleague Mike Doyle, though, from Pittsburgh, was almost in the It was wild. And I was sitting behind Raul Grijalva from Arizona, And there were moments in Raul was, you know, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And then, you know, but he was very gracious. It was a spectacular game.
How many people were
There were about 50 or 60 people there.
Is any Republican?
Oh, yeah. Our inspector was there. My colleague Charlie Dento was a very, very, you know, eclectic, bipartisan group.
San Antonio Holmes run for office.
San Antonio, oh my
He's
God.
got a great political career.
Lordy, I mean, just,
Why were you
and
rooting-
Fitzgerald.
Why were you rooting for the Steelers? Because the president was?
No. I just, you know, I took a look at the record and so forth, and, you know, the team is a real, you know, real interest. And it was their sixth opportunity, which is unheralded.
Not for the NFL.
Rosa?
Sometimes I am, in this case I wasn't. But I'm also a very strong New York Yankees fan as well. Yes.
Rosa, speaking of Republicans, should we read anything at all into the fact that not a single House Republican voted? Is it symbolic, substantive? Is it a bellwether?
I'm not going to read into it, Tom. You know, I think I sit on the Appropriations Committee, and we had a 9-hour hearing on this package, and there were 6 of the amendments that came up from my Republican colleagues that were accepted. I think there were 6 or 7 on the Democratic side that were accepted. So there was an inclusiveness and even-handedness. There was what we call the regular order, the process of a hearing, a markup. The bill is brought to the floor. Same thing is happening in the Senate. The president did go to Capitol Hill, and I applaud him for doing that and talking to my Republican colleagues. People make their decisions, you know, on their own. I truly would have thought that there would be. You never have a piece of legislation that is 100% of what you want, and if you are just fighting on those extremes, you're never going to get to good legislation. There has to be some sort of a consensus around it. I would have thought that pieces like COBRA, or some of the education pieces, or the extension of unemployment insurance, or some of the business pieces would have been appealing, because some of those suggestions were made by my Republican colleagues. For whatever reason, they determined that that's not something that they wanted to do, and they will have to answer to their constituents about those issues. Thank you.